Willkommen bei Mystica TV. Selbstheilung, finde ich, ist ein sehr, sehr wichtiges Thema heute für viele Menschen auf dem Bewusstseinsweg. Und es gibt vielleicht zwei Selbstheilungsmethoden, die ich großartig finde. Und eine dieser Methoden heißt The Journey. The Journey ist ein Buch, das auf 23 Sprachen erschienen ist, über 1 Million Mal verkauft worden ist. Ein großartiges Werk. Und die Autorin, und das ist meine Ehre, ist heute hier bei uns. Es ist Brandon Bays. Hallo Brandon.
Hallo, ich fühle mich auch sehr geehrt, hier zu sein und mit dir zu sprechen und mit alle das mitzuteilen. Ja.
Wunderbar. Herzlich willkommen.
Danke.
Und ich freue mich schon drauf. Es geht um Heilung, um Selbstheilung. Da können wir viel lernen. Bis gleich. The Journey. Die Reise in dein inneres Selbst hat zu tun mit Selbstheilung. Und das habe ich aus deinem Buch gelernt, liebe Brandon. Ich freue mich sehr, dass du hier bist. Und es ist eine besondere Ehre, weil das erste Interview auf Deutsch ist.
Ja, das stimmt. Ja. Ich habe Deutsch studiert für 1 Jahr auf der Universität Wien.
Wow,
und
okay.
deshalb ist es nicht perfekt. Aber wir werden probieren und
Wunderbar.
sehen, wie es ausgeht. Und wenn ich ein bisschen Englisch sprechen muss, ist es schon... Also, ich war 19 Jahre alt und jetzt bin ich 66. So, es ist schon eine lange Zeit, seit ich Deutsch sprechen muss. Und so, wenn ich ein bisschen Englisch sprechen muss,
Genau.
dann können wir schon alles einmischen, okay?
Absolut, und dann werden wir es
Ja,
mit
ja.
Untertiteln versehen. Alles easy, alles cool.
Ja.
Ja, also ich freue mich wirklich, dass du hier bist. Ich muss sagen, viele von euch wissen das ja schon. Ich hatte Krebs im Alter von 24 Jahren.
Ja.
Und einige Zeit danach ist mir dein Buch in die Hände gefallen. Und es ist wirklich so, schon als ich das Buch gelesen habe, sind Selbstheilungsprozesse vorgefallen. Also ich bin einfach mehr in meinen inneren Frieden gekommen. Ich habe diese innere Reise schon während des Lesens zum Teil vollzogen. Also das erlebe ich eigentlich selten, dass so ein Buch selbst schon so eine transformative Kraft hat.
Ja.
Und dafür erstmal einfach danke für dieses Buch.
Oh, es freut mich so sehr, weil ich höre das oft, die Leute, die sehr tiefes, starkes Disease haben. Ja. Und die lesen das Buch und irgendwie zwischen den Wörtern kommt eine Präsenz. Und es spricht die Wahrheit zur Wahrheit innerlich. Und so fängt der Prozess an zu heilen. Und es gab einmal eine Dame, und sie hat, ich muss es auf Englisch sagen, sie hat Crohn's Disease. Und sie war nur 28, ja. Und sie hat schon 26 Operationen gehabt, ja. Ja. Und die haben gesagt, die haben wieder die Kolon ausgenommen, ja. Und der Medizinerpraxis hat gesagt, diese nächste Operation ist deine letzte. Und dann, wir können nicht sagen, was passieren würde. Vorausscheinlich werden sie früher tot sein werden. Und sie hat das Buch gelesen und in der Mitte von das Buch, außer ihrem Darm, ist alle diese Zellerinnerungen gekommen. Und sie hat ganz schnell zu dem Ende des Buches gegangen, wo ich die Prozesse gegeben habe. Und hat es gelesen auf einem Tape Recorder. Ja, von der alten Zeit. Ja. Und sie hat es gelesen zu ihr selbst und hat selbst die Prozesse gemacht. Und in 3 Monate später, sie hat viele Journey gemacht in diese 3 Monate. Und 3 Monate später ist sie nach dem Spital gegangen, eine Operation zu haben. Und die haben gefunden, es ist gar nichts schlecht drin. Und die können ja nur sagen, die haben das rausgenommen, ja, und gesehen, es ist okay, es ist perfekt, wieder hereingesteckt und hat gesagt, ja, du bist perfekt, du bist völlig wohl. Und ich liebe das, weil ich habe so gebetet, dass wenn ich das Buch geschrieben habe, es ist schon 26 Jahre vorher, dass ich das geschrieben habe, ich wollte, dass die Leute das so annehmen würden und dass sie das selbstheilend machen würde und diese Methode nützen würde. Aber das stimmt, auch wenn die Methode nicht nützt, trotzdem spontan, manchmal so genau wie du, wird das Heilen passieren für Leute. Ja, und das freut mich so sehr. Ich fühle mich ganz privilegiert,
Yeah, wow. Ja,
mit
es
Leuten zu sprechen, ja, und die Seminare zu geben. Aber eigentlich, ich bin der Allerfrohste, wenn ich höre, dass Leute das annimmst und benutzt.
Das Schöne in dem Buch ist ja, dass es sozusagen in Anführungszeichen nicht nur der Selbstheilung dient, sondern eigentlich ganz tief in so einen inneren Frieden führt. Weil du dann auch im zweiten Teil des Buches mal kurz über diese Ich-Bin-Meditation von Ramana Maharshi erzählst.
Ja.
Das heißt, da geht es ganz tief in die Essenz, ins pure Sein. Und da habe ich auch diese Meditation durch dein Buch das erste Mal kennengelernt. Und ich bin jetzt schon ganz lange auf dem Advaita- und Satsang-Weg unter anderem. Aber das war auch für mich der Beginn. Also du siehst mal, was so ein Buch auslösen kann. Und,
das stimmt. Die Journey-Methode ist ganz anders als alle andere Methode, weil zuerst muss man in die Essenz hineinkommen.
Ja.
In diese gnädige Intelligenz hinein, das in Selbst hinein ist.
Genau.
Und von diesem tiefsten Platz fängt man an mit dem Journey-Prozess. Und was ich sagen möchte, darf ich auf Englisch sprechen?
Of course.
What science has found is that when you feel a strong emotion and you repress it, it releases into your bloodstream a quantifiable biochemistry, which will go to certain cell receptors and block them, rendering those cells incapable of communicating with the other cells in the body. And if over time illness happens, obviously it happens, where the cells are blocked. And conversely, what's also known to be true is that when we feel our emotions very naturally, just openly, like a child does, our cell receptors remain open. And so what the journey process really does for you, it takes you on a journey deep inside into this vast, boundless field of love,
wonderful.
of peace and freedom. And it's at that deepest level that you turn the flashlight, the torch on inside, and you go on a journey guided by your soul inside the body to get to these cell memories. And you go through quite a radical process of release and letting go, understanding what's happened to you, so that when new cells are born, they're born devoid of that old consciousness as new regenerative cells. And so this is why the journey is being used all over the world. I'm working in cancer hospitals, and I'm on the board where they know right now that if you get on this website for the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, which is the most powerful medical organization in the world, it says that 85% of all illness has an emotional basis. And the reason they can say this is because of all the work going on in the field of cellular healing. And so what my own journey in healing gave me was the ability to open directly into this love, into this freedom and this peace inside.
Wonderful.
And to be guided by my soul directly to these old repressed cell memories. And so the reason I wanted to express that all, because a lot of wissenschaftliche Wörter da, und deshalb muss ich auf Englisch sprechen. Leider, es tut mir leid.
Macht nichts, wir werden es untertiteln. Ist kein Problem.
Ja.
Aber der erste Schritt, the first step, English or German? German. The first step, der erste Schritt ist sozusagen erstmal die Gefühle zu fühlen, durch die Gefühle hindurchzugehen. Ja. Und das sagen ja heute viele Psychologen und Therapeuten, werden sich immer mehr bewusst, dass die Gefühle eigentlich das Entscheidende sind, dass wir die erstmal wirklich fühlen müssen.
Ja. Man muss die Gefühle umarmen und wirklich erlauben.
Das ist schön.
Und dann tief hinein. Und man kann tief hinein durch die Lagern gehen, bis man dann öffnet direkt in die Seele, in diese ganz riesengroße
pure Sein, pure Liebe.
Pure Liebe, in diese riesengroße Bewusstsein. Und in diese tiefste Ebene, dann tut man das Werk. Und dann ist es echt wirklich effektiv. Also es wirkt. Wenn man tut es mit meinem Kopf, also viele Methode.
Ja, ja, nur mental.
Ja, ja,
nicht.
es bleibt im Kopf. Aber wenn man wirkt, die tiefste Ebene, dann ist es extrem effektiv. Sogar ich bin in Tel Aviv, es gibt 2 Spitalen. Und ich bin an der Board of Directors für die Oncology, also das ist die Krebs-Section. Und die machen ein Programm, die nehmen ja doch Chemo, doch Radiation, ja, die machen das alles, Röntgenstrahlen und so weiter. Und wenn die fertig sind, dann brauchen sie eine Woche länger ins Spital zu bleiben und auszufinden, entdecken, was die emotionell Ursprung von diese Krebs war. Und die untergehen die ganze Journey-Prozess. Und sogar werke ich mit den Ministries for Education in sehr viele verschiedene Länder, weil die haben herausgefunden, dass wenn Leute, die Kinder sogar, diese emotionellen Blockaden so, wie sagt man, erklärt oder to clear them.
Reinigen?
Reinigen, ja, die Kinder eröffnet sich ganz spontan in ihre eigene strahlenden Potenzial. Und die Kinder dann werden viel besser in die Schule Examen machen. Also sogar haben die eine ganz jährige Länge Test gemacht mit Kindern in Südafrika. Und die haben herausgefunden, dass Kinder, die jede Woche einen Journey-Prozess machen, die haben 91 bis 93%, die werden schon Erfolg haben auf ihren Examen. Aber die Leute, die Kinder, die überhaupt keinen Journey-Prozess machen, die haben 67%. Und die lernen alle dieselben Sachen, ja. Aber wenn man wirklich erklärt die Blockaden und diese sehr tiefe Negative Beliefs,
Glaubenssätze, negative Gefühle.
Ja, alles. Ja. Dann eröffnet die Kinder ganz natürlich.
Die Kinder lernen ja viel schneller auch. Ne?
Ja, sehr viel schneller. Und da war eine Documentary aufgemacht auf das ganze Programm, was wir da gemacht haben. Und ich teile das, weil Leute denken, oh, ich kann nicht tun, was Brandon gemacht hat. Aber wenn Kinder es sogar machen können, sicherlich können wir alle.
Absolut.
Ja.
Great. Toll. Wir werden gleich ein bisschen über The Journey noch mal genauer sprechen, wie diese Methode funktioniert.
Ja.
Aber spannend ist natürlich deine eigene Geschichte, denn du musstest ja selber dich erstmal auf den Weg begeben.
Ja,
und es fing aber an, eigentlich warst du eine glückliche Frau, du hast einen Mann, du hattest Erfolg im Beruf, es war eigentlich alles okay.
Ja, es war perfekt eigentlich.
Es war perfekt sogar.
Ja.
Aber was geschah dann? Was passierte?
Ja, ich war sogar schon in diese komplementär, wie sagt man das auf Deutsch?
Komplementärmedizin, alternative
und ich habe so viele Accreditations, Ausbildungen und so. Ich bin ein Kinesiologist, ein Medical Hypnotist, NLP Master Therapist, Psychologist. I worked in massage, a master herbalist, and also in nutrition. So ich habe so viele Diplomas in this area.
Ja.
And when I was 39 years old, I ended up moving from New York City to Malibu, California. And at that time, I was a therapist in all these fields. And I'd also met Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins was 24 years old at that time, and his greatest passion in life.
Ja, einer der berühmtesten Bewusstseinstrainer weltweit, muss man wirklich sagen.
Yeah. And his greatest passion at the age of 24 years old was health. And mine was too. And so I ended up going on the road with Tony, and I became a presenter for him, teaching what he called the Living Health Program, where I taught people how to eat in such a way it cleanses the body, how to breathe in such a way it oxygenates. So very practical.
So you know all these things.
Yes. So the reason I'm saying all this, I was living, breathing, doing everything that I believed in. Vegetarian, 70% fresh and raw fruits and vegetables, 30% of it cooked, you know, working out every day, meditating every day since I was 19 years old, doing yoga every day. And as you said, more important than all of this, in a marriage I felt deeply blessed to be in. And so the last thing I ever expected to have happen was for my tummy to start to grow. And I just didn't want to believe it can't be happening. After all, I'm doing everything right, you know? And I so much didn't want to believe it was happening to me. And I'm not proud of this, but I'm sure you know this, that all therapists are trained never go into denial. And I so much didn't want to believe it was happening to me that when it got too big for me to zip up my trousers, I started wearing the long flowing dresses that were popular at that time. I just didn't want to face the fact that my tummy was growing. And one morning I was sitting for meditation, and I'd been meditating for 20 years. And you know how sometimes in meditation, the mind just winds down and it falls into the background. And I was just resting in a thought-free stillness. And out of nowhere came a gut knowing. I might be seriously ill and I need to get real and get myself to an orthodox medical doctor so I could have the test done. And when I came out of that meditation, I was just overwhelmed with shame. I thought, wow, what a fraud you are, Brandon. You teach 6,000 people at a time how to create radiant health, and you might be seriously ill? And I felt so much shame, and conversely, so much pride in all my diplomas and certifications in all these fields. I couldn't bring myself to call up my best friend, who was going to the kind of medical doctor I needed to go to. And instead, I did the chicken shit way out. I went to the local bookshop, and I picked out a book written by a surgeon who did not recommend hysterectomies. And when I called the number at the back of the book, I spoke to the nurse, and she said, "Do you know who this surgeon is?" And I said, "No, I just found a book." And she said, "She works for the California State Board of Medicine. You couldn't get in to see her for 6, maybe 8 months." And I said, I didn't know. If there's a cancellation, will you call me? And she says, "Well, it's not likely." And I put the phone down, and again, just burning in shame. 3 days later, she called me, and she said there was an appointment available, cancellation came through, in several weeks' time, and did I want it? And I said, "Yes, please, thank you." And I didn't know the nature of the tumor. I don't know what yours was like. But when I finally got to see the oncologist, she said it probably started as 1 cell when you were 8 years old and replicated to 2 cells. But towards the end, it started growing aggressively and exponentially. And I looked about 6 months pregnant, though I knew I wasn't. And at the end of this very graphic exam, she took me to her consultation room, and she started telling me my prognosis. And she said, "Brandon, haven't you noticed you're breathing shallowly? It's because it's grown all the way from here into your diaphragm, and it's crushing your organs. And this bleeding that's happening is not your monthly courses. This is because you're internally bleeding, and you need to get to the hospital today and find out, is it benign, is it malignant, but it's not going to matter. You're going to have it surgically removed. And I was sitting there in shock, and you would have thought, with all my background, you know, I would have taken that news with some sort of calm. But the truth was, my mind was going a million miles a minute, and my heart was pumping through the roof. And I said, listen, I'm in the alternative health field. I'm trained in kinesiology and homeopathy and in herbs, in cleanses, and medical hypnosis and all of this. I said, if I can, through one of my techniques, get the bleeding to stop, how much time can you give me? And she said to me, Brandon, you chose me because I practice integrative medicine. And that's who I work with now these days. I work with medical doctors who practice integrative medicine. And she said, attach to this clinic, we provide people with acupuncture, herbs, cleanses. We do homeopathy. We have yoga. We have meditation. And she said, if I thought you could go that route, that is the first route I would recommend for you. She said, but look at all these case studies and all these books. There's never been a woman who's been diagnosed with a mass as large as you, the size of a basketball, who's healed herself. And so you're going to need to get real and get into hospital today. We had another 45-minute conversation, you know. And I got her to agree that if I could get the bleeding to stop over the next 3 days, she would give me 1 month. But if I weren't significantly healed in a month's time, then she needed to do what she knew how to do, which was surgically remove it. I can remember so clearly. I'm a New Yorker, as you know, but I was in downtown LA where her offices, where her clinic was, and I had finally asked my best friend to come with me, and so we left her offices, and at this point, my heart's thumping so hard, and my mind, it's like I would talk about a monkey mind, you know. And I looked up, and in front of me, there was this mimosa tree with blossoms, golden blossoms that looked like golden rain. And when I looked at that tree, I had what is classically called a sartori, a moment, where time stops and becomes timeless. And I looked at that tree and I was absolutely arrested by the beauty of this tree that had blossoms like golden rain. And as I looked at this tree, my racing thinking mind started to wind down, and it fell into the background. And out of nowhere, waves of gratitude came. Gratitude, just to see the color yellow, to smell a fragrance I'd not smelled going into her offices. Gratitude for just being allowed to breathe. And as I stood there, riveted in that timeless moment, out of nowhere came a gut knowing. Somehow, I would be guided to heal. And even though I didn't have a clue how that would be, I was so grateful because I was already living, breathing, doing everything that was available out there. I was so grateful at that time for all the work going on in the field of cellular healing, and specifically for the work of Deepak Chopra, and for all in the healing clinic that I worked in New York City, where I'd seen people who the medical field had given up on, who'd healed without drugs or surgery. And I knew if only one person was capable of cellular healing, it meant it's possible for the human anatomy. And I was also grateful for the work going on in the field of cellular healing. And Chopra, many of you know who Chopra is, and at that time, he was not the guru he's become today. He was a chief surgeon general in a hospital in Boston. And what he did was a radical thing at that time. He decided to amass case studies of people who had healed without drugs or surgery. And the reason this was so radical is because all of us, whether you're in the medical field or you were in the alternative field, we've all been trained the same way. You look at the symptoms that lead to ill health, that lead to death. We were all focused on what makes people die.
Yeah.
But Chopra says we know enough about that.
Yeah, but what is the inner world? What are the experiences?
What makes those people who did not have drugs or surgery heal against the odds? And he amassed hundreds of case studies, and eventually thousands. And he could find that they only had two qualities in common. One was that through some act of grace or spontaneous event, they actually got access to this that he called the cell memory. And the reason I'm speaking in English is because I want to be able to share the science about this. Is what we know about the cells inside the body is they all replicate at varying speeds. So for instance, if you've ever had a suntan, I'm sure you have, how many of you have noticed it actually, it faded away in 3 weeks' time? That's because old cells slough off and are replaced by new regenerative cells. Liver cells take 6 weeks, stomach lining less than 3 days. And the one that just blows my mind are the eye cells. Because do you know that in less than 2 days, in less than 48 hours,
really?
You will have an all-new inner eyeball.
Wow.
And the only way I could put this into a context was that my mom, she had one of those eye operations, you know, where they slit her eye open, inserted a lens, put the flap back and put a patch on. And a day and a half later, not even 2 days later, she could see clearly. As a matter of fact, there won't be a single molecule in your body a year from now that was here today. But Chopra asked a question no one else was asking at that time. He said, well, why is it if you look at a liver that's riddled with cancer in January, why would it be riddled with cancer in June? Good question to ask, isn't it? And what he postulated at that time, which is only subsequently been verified by scientists working both in the American military and in Russian military, is stored inside that degenerative cell are these old repressed cell memories, where I spoke about earlier that when you felt a strong emotion and you repressed it, it released the biochemistry, and it literally went to cell receptors and blocked them. And that old consciousness, that cell memory, got stored. And before that cell generation died, it passed on its programming and its cell memory to the next cell generation. So the next cell generation were born as an exact replica of the previous cell generation. And so that's why when you look at a liver that's riddled with cancer in January, Chopra asked, well, why would it be riddled with cancer in June? And it's because this programming got passed on from one cell generation to the next. And what he found was, with all the thousands of case studies of people who had healed without drugs or surgery, they had two qualities in common. One was that through some act of grace or spontaneous event, they actually got access to this that he called the infinite intelligence. The part of you that makes your heart beat and your eyes shine and your hair grow. This vast field of love that is your essence. And the second thing that they had in common was spontaneously they got access to these cell memories. And if somehow they released what was stored there in the cells, when the new cells were born, they were born devoid of that old consciousness as new regenerative cells. Now, I knew all this.
Interesting. Yeah.
I knew all this.
Yeah.
I'd studied with Chopra. I was at the cutting edge of what was happening in the field of cellular healing. And I could tell you something. You can know all the science on the planet.
Read all the books. And,
read all the books. See all the case studies with your own eyes. But unless you have a method, it's no more than a bunch of words on a piece of paper and a real place of inspiration. And yet when I looked at that mimosa tree and time stopped and I got a gut knowing, somehow I would be guided
to uncover from this one
how to open into the infinite intelligence and how to get access to the cell memories. And so my great journey that I am every day grateful for is that spontaneously I did learn how to open into this infinite intelligence and how to get access to cell memories and how to release the stored consciousness there, come to understanding and forgiveness and letting go so that when the new cells are born, they're born devoid of that old consciousness. And it was 6.5 weeks later that I had the 43 scans done in hospital. And I was pronounced textbook perfect, clean, completely tumor-free. So the reason I wanted to share the science behind that is up until this point, and I still don't know any method other than the journey, that can directly open you into this vast, boundless field of love, of truth. Not as a pretty notion or a concept or I had an experience of peace and meditation.
The field is always there.
Yes, directly
it's just a remembering maybe.
In this field. An opening directly into the field. And it's that deepest level, from that place, that all of journey work happens. And that's why it's so prevalently used by medical doctors around the world. I've trained many, hundreds of medical doctors. And why it's used by Ministry of Educations and even ministries of government. As a matter of fact, if you have work-related stress and you work for the Dutch government in Holland, and the only clinic they will send you to is one that offers journey work. I mean, you can pay to go to any, but the government will pay their own government employees to go because the journey is known to getting to the emotional root cause of what has put the surface stress in place. And I'd say, honestly, Thomas, that I would say that really 90% of the people that come to the journey don't have a physical illness. They just have a longing
it's for
to come home.
To come home.
To come home and to clear whatever blocks them or shuts them down or holds them back to live.
It's a wonderful way for consciousness, for
to
awakening,
live from
for being.
So it's really about coming home to the deepest truth of your own essence. And at that deepest level, having the tools to clear whatever blocks you.
Great, wonderful. It's very interesting in some ways. In my personal way, I also had cancer. We stay in English, I think. We talk in English now.
Okay,
it's fine. And when I was 24 years, and I had also this moment of just fell into the anger and why me, and so, and I felt, and then I landed into this love field, in this just being, and just beautiful. And also I was in this consciousness. I know, okay, I could be healthy, it's fine, I do all what I can do, from this point on, I realized that we all have this deep freedom inside ourselves.
So
that
true.
we are, that's all one. Yeah.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
we can't find words for these things.
No.
Many spiritual teachers talk about these things. It has to do with awakening. But on the other hand, everyone has the possibility to get into this freedom.
Yes.
I realized in this moment.
Yes.
And my journey also was another, of course, but this is what many people have together who are in deep suffering. There is a point, and then you are in freedom, and you know, okay, fine. And then I go, and then I look what
Yes.
happens.
Yeah. I was in Tel Aviv, and the Ministry for Education decided that they were going to undergo this whole journey for a year. So learning the work of the journey over a year's time. And the reason it was different, and the reason I'm saying yes to exactly what you said, is that usually when I work with the Ministry for Education in a country, we teach the teachers and they give it to the kids. But in Israel, they decided, we're not going to have our teachers undergo work unless we in the government have experienced that.
That's great.
And at the end of a year's training, I went to the ministry offices in Tel Aviv, and there were the 40 ministers, you know, the ministers of the high schools, the ministers of psychology, the ministers of who the principals were and headmasters were, the ministers of grade schools, each of the, you know, they were the head for the whole of the country. There were 40 of them, Minister of Finance. And, you know, the head minister, she said to me, Brandon, I don't want you to say anything yet. I just want you to listen. And one woman, she said over the years she had been diagnosed with breast cancer and had healed without drugs or surgery. And another, she had a very acrimonious divorce. And even though it was very acrimonious, she found a peace inside of herself. But the one who touched me the most was something similar to what you said, where she said, Brandon, I've been walking these ministries' halls for 18 years, and I had so much anger. I've been so stressed out, and I wouldn't even look people in the eye. I wouldn't shalom to them, which is their greeting, which means peace. I'd get home. I have 8 children at home because they're replacing those lost during the Holocaust. And she said, and I'm stressed out to the max. I get home, my children come late for dinner, and every single dinner I'm shouting at my children. And the next day I get into work, and all I do is go to committee meetings and I argue with people. And she said I'd come to hate myself. My life was a life of just anger. She said I did my very first journey process. And she did what you did. And she said, I got to the emotional root cause of what had put that surface anger in place. And she said, then I went on a journey inside my body, and I got to the cell memories that had been the catalyst for this impulse of anger. And she said, I cleared it out at that deepest level. And that night I came home, and of course my children, late for dinner again, and of course their food had gone cold again. And she said, I thought to myself, who cares? If it's cold food, it's still healthy. You know, I've got 8 healthy, beautiful children. And she said, my youngest said to me at the end of dinner, she said, Mommy, where did all the anger go? And she said, the next day I got into the committee meeting, and for the first time I started looking people in the eyes, and she had the people had the same shining eyes that I knew I had, and we got more done at that committee meeting because they'd all had their journey processes than we had gotten done at the last 10 committee meetings. And the reason I love her story is because we always think that I'll never get to the bottom
Yeah.
of this
Yeah, yeah,
anger,
yeah.
this stress,
Or
this
the sadness or something
sadness
else.
or
Yeah.
loneliness.
Yeah.
And yet, in the very first process she did, she got to the
Wow.
emotional root cause and so finished with it.
So, I mean, that's the secret. When we go through, we realize there is nothing. It's away. And then it's just freedom here.
Yeah, freedom
isn't
is
it?
here. And in the journey, we let that freedom then guide us to the cell memories.
Yeah, let's look at that.
Yeah,
how is the journey? How can we describe what the journey means? So, in 2 or 3 steps for the
Yes. Well, what you spoke about so eloquently, that it begins with the first part is about getting real
people. Yeah.
and opening into your emotions. And as you begin to go from a more surface motion, you will find that there's actually deeper and deeper layers of emotions. And eventually, spontaneously, unexpectedly, you end up opening into a vast field of love, of freedom. And you realize it's been there all along, but all of us, we buy into the layers that cover it. And then if you're very lucky, you fall so in love with the truth inside of you that you're willing to go on a journey inside the body and actually go to certain cellular locations and uncover those old repressed cell memories and go through that very deep process of, first of all, opening into those old cell memories that are buried inside and releasing the stored consciousness, the pain, the shame, the blame, the hurt, the devastation, the loneliness. Go through that process of releasing it and then coming to a place of understanding. And then there's a point where you're given an invitation to forgive. And in my direct living experience, there's a great mysterious power in forgiveness. There's a reason it's part of every single religion that I've had the privilege to dive into, is that when we forgive life, God, other people,
Our parents.
ourselves, yeah. Something happens. That's when we let go of that old pain.
Yeah.
And then that's when the cells are releasing and finishing with the story of pain. Because we drag around these stories our whole life long. And so that when new cells are born, they're born devoid of that old consciousness. And, when I, first uncovered the cell memory, now, of course, it was a cell memory I already knew about, of extreme, brutal, violent abuse as a child. Now, as a therapist, of course, I thought that I so long since had that handled. But it's almost like, the best way I can describe it, in the Sunday Times in Britain, they had a cartoon where they describe what the journey is and does. And they show this woman carrying this big bag of all of her garbage. And it's raining outside, and she's walking up a mountain, and carrying this bag. And in my case, what was my garbage? What was my baggage? Me and my story. Oh, I've come to accept my violent past. I have compassion for it. I have understanding, but I'm dragging this story of me and my pain. Now, she gets to the top of, it was a 2-page cartoon in the Sunday Times, in Britain, a very intelligent newspaper. And she gets to the top of the hill, and on the other side of the hill, she's dropped the baggage. And it said at the top, the power of forgiveness. And she forgave. That's when she let go of her story of me and my pain. And when she started going down the hill, the sun was shining, the birds were chirping, rainbows, and she's skipping down the hill. And that, to me, is the healing power of forgiveness. Up until, I was nearly 40 years old, I accept my violent past. I'm a therapist. I understand it. I'm compassionate. I'm a noble person, I can understand it. It's all bullshit. You know, it's only when you open your heart and you wholly forgive. And it hurt to do that, I have to tell you. Because I'd created this noble identity of Brandon, the noble therapist, who'd come to accept her violent past. And I had to face down 30 years of pride, dressed up as compassion. And it hurt to face down that much pride. But eventually I realized my life depended on it. And I opened my heart and I wholeheartedly, absolutely, completely forgave. And it was while I was forgiving I realized that tumor had never been clinging to me. I'd been clinging to it. And 30 years of a blame game, dressed up as compassion, but 30 years of a blame game was finally over. And so that's why I'm including that the journey is both a method for awakening, for sure, in a bow-defining way, into the infinite intelligence, into this vast field of love. But it's also about coming to completion with your karma, with the vasanas, the karmic imprints that are stored in our cells. And when I first shared it with Punjaji, Papaji, a master who has been very influential in my
many
own
other spiritual teachers also who were with him.
Yes, And he was very influential, and I took the journey to him. And he said to me, he gave me the spiritual name Janaki. It means unborn, or born of the self. He's told me to remain unborn, to not take up residence anywhere as anything. And it's also the goddess Sita, pervading all of existence. And he said, Janaki, this is the new energy medicine. And what you're helping people deal with is there are some skaras, the karmas that they brought in with them, and the vasanas, the tendencies that are stored, the themes that they're facing in their life. And, you know, when I first came here to Munich, and when was it, Bettina? 2005. I came here to Munich, and there was a man at the Journey Intensive. We were in Fürstenfeldbruck.
Fürstenfeldbruck.
Yeah.
I was born in Fürstenfeldbruck, besides
Oh
that.
my God! Well, anyway, we were 240 people in Fürstenfeldbruck, in the Ratshaus, I believe that's where we were. And one man said that on the second day of the Journey Intensive, he went inside his heart and he said, Brandon, I don't have anything wrong with my heart. He said, but when I went inside, the cell memory I uncovered wasn't my own. It was my mother's, and she was in the concentration camps in World War II. But he said, I was born post-World War II, and she went, shh-dum. We don't talk about this. And he said, part of what I needed to do was to release all her stored pain. And in living color, I experienced what she went through in those concentration camps, the horror, the devastation, the terror she experienced. And I had to release it all. And he said, and at the end, when I finally came to a place of forgiveness, he said, I realized that even though up until this point I'd never known what my mother had experienced, I'd been born and I felt like I had a lid over my life. That I wasn't, because of whatever she went through, and I didn't know what that was, I did not have permission to be free, to be joyous, to make mistakes, to get it wrong, to be crazy, to be wild, to, you know, and I asked, well, how many of you in the room feel this way? Born post-World War II like me, and they all raised their hands. And then I looked at my own life, and my mother grew up in Vienna, Austria. And her first husband, he was a photojournalist taking pictures and was shot down by the Luftwaffe. And so my brother, Michael, was born without a father. And her father was put into a Nazi prison in another country and shot through the head. And so she ended up marrying an American soldier, my father, first lieutenant for the American Army, stationed there in Vienna. Moved to New York. I grew up in New York. Now, she refused to speak any German. So the only time I heard German was when they would argue in German. That was that secret language, which I didn't know what it was. But just like this guy, my mother went stumm.
Wow.
We don't talk about it. I didn't even know my grandfather's name. I didn't know about my brother's father. Anything. I didn't actually find out all of it until about 6 years ago. But one of the things I realized that I'd grown up with is I'd grown up with a lid in a country that's supposedly all about freedom. America is supposedly all about freedom. But I realized I'd grown up with a lid over my life. And I realized I was coming here to Germany and to the European countries, not only to serve in the healing and the awakening that needs to happen, but for my own healing and awakening. And I get a journey process once a week.
Wow. Okay.
When I'm on tour. I never want to be so arrogant as to say I have it all handled. And I know there's more than one cell memory here. And lately, a lot of the epigenetic memories that have been passed down generationally or that we brought from other lives are showing up. And one of the things, I mean, let's say someone who's listening to this, a friend of yours has been diagnosed with, let's say, breast cancer. What is the first question the oncologist asks? By the way, my sister's an oncologist. The first question they ask is, who in your family has cancer?
Yeah.
Now, we've known for a long time that the physical propensity for illness and disease gets passed on genetically. But recently in the last decade, and it's so interesting, you can see it all over the web, just Google it, they have discovered what was emotionally experienced in World War II has been passed down to all the next generations, and that emotional experience is much of what we are clearing in the journey work. And so some of the issues you uncover in doing this very deep work isn't your own. They're not your own. And some of it belongs to your parents, great-grandparents, great-grandparents. And actually, one of the luminaries for the field of epigenetics, Dr. Marilyn Monk, who I was just with last week. She was a journey practitioner. She's 82 years old now, is a professor emeritus in this field, doing all the work that Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden, so that work in the field of epigenetics. She said her latest papers are written on that it's for 4 to 5 generations that the emotional issues are being passed down. So she said between 4 and 5 generations of the emotional issues. And so much of the work that I'm doing now, obviously 25 years on or 26 years on since the tumor, is that inside myself, not only have I been clearing the emotional issues and physical issues, but part of what I've been clearing was what was emotionally passed on to me through the generations. And also what I brought in with me through past life issues that will show up spontaneously in a journey process. And what I love about the journey process, it doesn't require you to believe in anything.
Yes, that's great.
It's
I
your
think also
own
it's very open. It's
direct
just experience and just
direct healing experience. And
go through.
I actually don't think anyone can do the healing for you.
Yeah.
I feel that part of your healing is you uncover your own truth.
Yeah.
You find your own answers. You come to your karmic lessons. And this is much of what I've been having to learn over these last many years since I first started here in Germany. You know?
Yeah, but thank you very much for these wonderful stories and you're talking about. It's a kind of collective movement, I think, more and more.
Yeah.
And more and more people realize that this is a wonderful work. And what would you say? What are the last things in the world? What you can realize? What you can see? How many people work with the journey? How does it grow?
You know what I'd rather tell is the story, because you know that we give the journey in 39 countries. And when I went to Israel, there was a rabbi there that told them, you go to Germany and you go through the whole Journey Practitioner program. You learn this work and then you learn how to forgive. And you come back to Israel and you teach us all how to forgive.
Great.
Now, we were 287 people in the eastern part of Germany. And I wanted to do it there because I found when the Berlin Wall came down, there was an internal wall that I didn't feel came down. It has now. But back then, you know, it was still quite fresh. And so I thought, I'm going to bring everybody to the eastern part of Germany. And so we had 18 different nations. We were 287 people, 18 different nations from America, Japan, South Africa, Dubai, from Poland, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, England, you know, Kuala Lumpur, all over, you know, from all the countries that I work in. And there were 38 Jews that came from Israel, and we had 87 German speakers from Germany, Switzerland, Austria. And we were at the No Ego retreat. And on the first night, I stood on stage, and you could feel there was this energy in the room. There was an elephant in the room, an invisible elephant that nobody was talking about. And you could feel there were the 87 German speakers wanting to find out, and they had their Kopfhörer on, getting translation, and they were on one side of the room. And on the other side of the room were the 38 Hebrew speakers getting translation. And you could feel this side of the room wanted to reach out to this side, but didn't know how. This side was trying to bridge this gap. Finally, on the second night, I said, okay, we need to talk. There's this big elephant.
Where is the elephant?
In this room. And you can feel it. This side of the room is trying to reach out. This side of the room doesn't know where to begin. And I said, you know, World War II was not the only world war that has ever happened. We have all been warring against one another since mankind first learned how to make a spear from a stick and how to take a rock and throw it at another person. And there are no countries that have not warred against another country. There are no peoples that have not warred against another people. There are no religions that have not warred against another religion. And the truth of the matter is, all of us have war consciousness stored in our DNA. And I said, as long as it's stored inside of our cells, the external, the macrocosm, will always reflect the microcosm. The external will always reflect the internal. And I said, we can't expect world peace to happen. It's not going to happen with our politicians. It's just not the way where it's going to come from.
Of course.
If world peace is going to happen, and you were saying there's a whole movement here, it's going to happen because each of us met and cleared the war consciousness inside ourselves. And I said, okay, we weren't ushered and given guns when we were born, but we were all given internal guns, and we know exactly what to say to people. The judgments, the criticisms, what to say to make them feel like they are nothing. And the external bullets, they're not merciful, because when they go in, they stay with that person for the rest of their life. And I said, and then there's the internal bullets. I'm not good enough. I'll never get it right. I'm not perfect enough. I'm not competent. I'll never be good at anything. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. And these are the internal bullets. And we've all of us got this battle going on inside of us. And until we clear this internal battle, the external will always be a reflection of that. So I invited everybody to spontaneously close their eyes and open up and just begin to empty out all the things they've said to other people, that they've done to other people that they wish they'd never said. They wish they'd never done. The things that they weren't proud of, that they wish they could take back. They wished they could turn the clocks back, and that it's haunting them their whole life. And of course, I'm in it with them. And I'm sitting there for 20 minutes emptying out all the things I've said and done that I'm not proud of, that I wish I hadn't said in anger or in hurt. And then there comes a point in every journey process where you ask for forgiveness. And truthfully, I didn't feel I had it in me to ask life to forgive me for all of those innocent and sometimes not innocent moments. But something inside of me realized I wasn't doing this just for me. I was doing it for life. And I opened my life and I asked life to forgive me. And it hurt. And then there came a point where I had to forgive myself. And again, I didn't know if I could, but I realized I'm not doing this just for me. And I opened my heart and I wholeheartedly forgave myself. And everybody was doing this same process. And I said, you know what, just open your eyes and just turn to the person next to you and say to them, I forgive you for the war consciousness that's been stored in your DNA, for all the battle that's been going on inside you. I forgive you. And people were just saying this to each other. And I said, you know what, just stand up and find anybody. And the 87 German speakers leapt to their feet and ran towards the 38 Hebrew speakers.
Wow.
And they leapt to their feet and ran towards the 87 German speakers. And they fell into each other's arms, sobbing forgiveness. And I watched as someone from Japan was forgiving an American, and we all know what happened in Hiroshima. And someone from Poland forgiving someone from Britain. I saw as someone who was Muslim forgiving a Christian, and a Christian forgiving a Jew, a black forgiving a white, someone from Germany forgiving someone from France. And it just went on and on and on. And the most extraordinary thing happened. As I stood there on stage, watching 287 people from 18 different nations and all different languages and skin colors, I saw all the walls between us come down. The separation between the countries, the walls between the skins, the walls between the religions. And I saw it all fall away. And we were left as a field of absolute oneness. And I thought, whoa, we're just this tiny microcosm of 287 people and only 18 different nations here. But I realized that if this can happen in this tiny microcosm, it means it's possible for our world.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful when on United Nations International Peace Day, I was invited to share this exact story.
Okay. Yeah.
And so there is a wave of awakening and healing where people are feeling a global imperative that we be part of the change our world needs. And what I'm grateful to, and I don't believe this is my work, though it's still constantly being birthed freshly and expanding.
It works
and
through you and through
yes,
the people. And
it was a
it's more and
download
more.
from. It's a download from grace.
Yeah.
I'm just a shepherd for the word. But the journey gives you the method
Wow.
to come home to the peace. And if I peace within your families, peace with your friends, peace with your community. And so when you asked me about the global prayer, that's what my prayer is for this world.
Maybe peace on earth. in
That,
every heart.
that we all of
Yeah.
us become like
Yeah.
you throw a stone into a lake of consciousness
Yeah,
that is your
yeah,
life.
yeah.
And that the waves of awakening and healing go out from here.
Wonderful.
So this is what my prayer is for our world.
Brandon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful story. Great.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share and just speak heart to heart, human to human.
Yeah, it's very touching. I had no questions. I'm just open and hear your words, and it's wonderful. And I thank you very much. And I thank you that you are here in Munich. And I thank you also that you sozusagen give us the opportunity to do a wonderful online course with Bettina Halifax, who does it in German.
Yes.
And it's your both work. I'm very happy that we have the opportunity. Und jetzt nochmal auf Deutsch. Ihr Lieben, ihr habt richtig gehört, es gibt einen Online-Kurs, The Journey. Bettina Halifax hat ihn mit uns produziert. Wunderbar, eine tolle Reise, wo ihr wirklich selbst Schritt für Schritt tiefer in euren Frieden eintauchen könnt. And this is the first step, the inner peace of one person and peace on earth may be the solution for us all.
Ja, und ich muss sagen, dass diese Schützelengelchen für ganz Deutschland und Österreich und der Schweiz ist wunderbare Bettina Halifax. Und ich fühle mich sehr geehrt und privilegiert, mit ihr zu präsentieren, die ganzen Journey Intensiv auf Deutsch. Und sie spricht es auf Deutsch und sie hat so eine Präsenz mit ihr. Sie spricht von der tiefsten Liebe. Ja. Und sie selbst ist sehr, sehr frei und voll von Liebe. Und in diesem Programm, ich bin so dankbar, dass du es auf Deutsch gemacht hast. Eigentlich muss ich sagen, Thomas, weil dieses Programm, man lernt, ja, also manchmal in 15 Minuten oder manchmal in 30 Minuten. Man lernt die tiefste Werk und man kann es zu Hause tun.
Genau.
Und genau,
Schritt für Schritt, im eigenen Tempo.
Und im eigenen Tempo und auch du kannst es über und noch einmal das Werk tun. Genau. Weil ich tue das Journey-Werk jede Woche. Durch ein ganze, ich werde
und bist in der ganzen Welt unterwegs auch noch. Das darf man nie vergessen, bist permanent präsent.
Ja, und morgen, ich werde ein Prozess.
In München, genau.
In München, hier, ein Prozess mit Bettina machen. Sie wird die tiefste Prozess mit mir machen. Damit ich bin erlaubt, auf die Bühne zu stehen, weil man kann nicht auf einer Bühne stehen, wenn man nicht selbst das Werk tut. Und das ist die Geschenk von der Journey, ist dann wenn man tut es selbst, das kann man nie von dir nehmen.
Ja, die Erfahrung, die eigene Erfahrung ist einfach das Wertvollste.
Das muss man selbst lernen. Wunderbar. Und ja, es ist nicht, dass man lernt eine Methode hier von Hirn, Gedanken, aber man lernt.
Es ist eine Erfahrung. Es ist eine Erfahrung, eine Transformation.
Ja,
so,
der innerliche Guru. Ja, das ist nicht für die äußerliche Guru, sondern von der innerlichen Guru. Und dann ist die Wahrheit, man findet.
Cool. Ich danke dir, Brandon. Wunderbar.
Ich danke dir auch. Und
alles Gute.
Danke und herzliche Namaste.
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 Namaste auch euch, ihr Lieben. Also, wie gesagt, es gibt den Kurs, es gibt natürlich das großartige Buch und weitere Bücher von Brandon Bass. Ja, wunderbar. Wenn Frieden in der Welt entsteht durch so eine Reise, was gibt es Schöneres? Bis bald.